Tuning back in, we have got Gemma on, who went viral overnight with last night's broadcast, answering all of the questions about HMP Peterborough, where Gemma has served time in the mother and baby unit, has given birth, and all of the Julie questions that come in. There's still tons. So we're going to have a certain structure. Jen is going to be interviewing Gemma for the first section, whereby Gemma is going to get into great detail about what led up to the incarceration, being pregnant, giving birth, and the horror of a guard that disrespects Gemma. And this is an ongoing thing. It's a very tricky situation to deal with. So Jen is going to handle all that section. I'll be watching babysitting, and I will be
babysitting. It's called dad duties. I've just got to stop you there. I hate it when a guy goes, "I'm babysitting." No, you're looking after your child.
Right. So whatever questions come in, I'll be watching while I'm dad. What was it?
Looking after your own child.
While I'm looking after my own child, I will be watching all of the questions coming in, starring them, and getting them ready for when let's let Gemma tell her full story, and then all the questions will be saved by me, and then I'm going to come in. We're going to switch. Jen's going to be looking after our own child, and I'm going to cease looking after our own child, and then I'm going to come in and handle the question sections. We're going to do the old switcheroo. So over to Jen and Gemma. Enjoy.
Thank you for that political correctness there. But thank you, Gemma.
Yes.
No, honestly, when Shaun told me, now he's only given me sort of snippets of your story surrounding the birth of your child and how you gave birth in HMP Peterborough. Now, I'm really intrigued. Now, I found my pregnancy to be difficult and quite challenging, yet one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. Mm-hmm. But then I heard about your experience. I was like, that just completely ruins every sort of wonderful experience that you should have during pregnancy. To then give birth in prison. I mean, where do I even begin? Like I said to Shaun, so obviously she wasn't pregnant she didn't conceive in prison, did she?
No.
No. So I think we're going to have to go sort of start from that part of your story and go out from there, really. Just to build a picture, if you wouldn't mind. Thanks.
Yes. So I was incarcerated for GBH with intent due to attacking my perpetrator because he was a vile person. So I defended myself by using a offensive weapon. And that's what caused me to be arrested for GBH with intent. Well, the charge was higher than that. I don't know if I can say it because it's daytime, isn't it? But it was lowered from a more serious charge to GBH with intent. So whilst I was on bail, I got into a whirlwind relationship with my now partner of 16 years. So it was a success story. And I ended up getting pregnant on bail, Jen. So then what happened is I rang my solicitor. I said, I'm pregnant. What do I do? Because I thought I never even heard of a mother and baby unit in prison. I didn't know you could give birth in prison. I'd never in my life heard of people giving birth in prison. So she said, there's mother and baby units. It's highly likely you'll get a place. She said, don't worry about, abortion or anything like that. That doesn't have to be an option. She said, but it'll be better if you remand yourself at your next court dates, because what the courts like to do, Jen, is keep pushing back your court date and adjourning it so that you give birth on the out. They don't want to send pregnant mothers to prison. They try not to do it, but I didn't want my child going into care should my partner not be granted, the child in his care, say they said he was too young or this and that. I thought I just want to get a place on the mother and baby unit and know that I can take care of my baby. So she said, go to court and ask if you can start your sentence, go guilty, remand yourself. So that's what I did. I said to the judge, can you remand me? And I was 7 months, around 6.5 months, 7 months gone. And he said, yeah, I accept your guilty plea. And there you go. Take her down to the cells. And that's where I went. I went down to the cells to await my escort to prison. Yeah.
I can just picture it now. You're 7 months pregnant. I know what that's like, obviously. And you're humongous and you're getting taken into a place like that.
Yeah.
I mean, how scary was that? How were your hormones at that point?
Do you know, it didn't bother me, Jen. I felt quite safe. I felt safer in there because you've got to think I'd just come out of a domestic violence relationship, right? And not unfortunately, I'd share a child with him, but unfortunately that pregnancy with him in my ear abusing me and the labour with him at the birth was far worse than me going to prison pregnant. So this is why I'm trying to remove the stigma of women going to prison pregnant, because women are out there protesting against it, saying, no woman should be sent to prison pregnant. But it's equally as bad being in a toxic relationship, Jen, being abused all through your pregnancy and then being abused in the labour. So I felt quite relieved. I thought, you know what, I'm going to be fed. I've got a roof over my head. So I didn't feel too scared. Now, being pregnant, you avoid the sweat box. You know what sweat box is, don't you? It's the van with the tiny little compartments. Yeah, with the little stool. So I avoided the sweat box. So they took me in like a transit van style thing. That's all I can explain it. And yeah, that was it. Then I was off to Peterborough, heavily pregnant. And that was it. That part.
Not knowing your story then, and obviously there's going to be viewers watching today who don't, was that your first time inside?
Yeah. So it was my first time inside, but it wasn't my first criminal charge. So unfortunately, I had quite a few criminal charges. So I'd done community service in the past. I'd been on electronic tag. I'd been in and out of magistrates court, but this was my first personal Crown Court case because the charge was so serious and I was mildly high profile for certain areas of the district, so it was my first time in prison.
So when you're going in, you're 7 months gone, and do they have to do all the strip searching and all the usual stuff they do with other inmates, or is it just cut and shut and do you get a nicer cell as well? Sorry, I've double questioned you there. Sorry about that.
That's fine. So we avoid the strip search. So that's like they give you a bit of kind of decency. So you avoid the strip search, but you get the same process as everybody else apart from the strip search. So you still get your healthcare check, you still get your microwave meal, and that's pretty much it really. And then you're just shipped off to healthcare and you're just spending your pregnancy on the normal wings, but they will put you on a vulnerable wing, it's called, where they house, Jen, pregnant inmates, vulnerable inmates, and child unalivers. So you're putting your pregnant women with your child unalivers, but I can't stress to you enough, it's safe. They're not going to attack you. Nobody in prison is going to attack a pregnant woman. It's just the code. So I felt extremely safe, but I just didn't like sharing the same space as a child unaliver, even though, I was quite intrigued to know. I didn't know too many details because they keep it quite hush-hush, but there was 2 women on there that were suspected to have done something. There was rumours, but they were conflicting, so you never really knew the truth. So, so that's where you think they would put them on a different wing, wouldn't you, the child unalivers, but they don't, because people want to attack them, you see, and that's classed as a privilege wing, so it houses the decent inmates as well that don't kick off, so that's where they're safe.
I don't know how I'd feel about that, especially with the pregnancy rage, hormones, and meeting people who, like you said, have allegedly or potentially unalive children. I think I'd really struggle to sit with that information, but no. And so you're on the wing. You're not sharing a cell. You're in a cell on your own, pregnant, I guess.
Now then, I don't know if they do pad up pregnant inmates with other inmates. I'll have to ask my friend because she just gave birth in there in 2017. So I'll have to double check that information. But I got a single cell because I was classed as a prolific violent offender under MAPA 2. So basically, I'm a menace to society. But if you knew my past charges as to why I got that, you would actually laugh. I mean, not the one I went to prison for, that was not funny, but the 2 prior to that is ridiculous. It was more or less guilty by association because everything I've been done for on my criminal record was all with my toxic ex, who was an absolute, yeah, he weren't nice anyway. So that was, I was just dragged into all of his carry on. So I did get a single cell, luckily. Now, going into labour, some people might go over to the mother and baby unit. They might get their place before they go into labour. But I went to my midwife appointment, because you still get all your midwife appointments. You still get to go to the hospital for your scans. You get all the same privileges as you would do on the out, right? I went to the midwife appointment. She goes, there's something in your urine. I can't remember what the terminology was, but it triggered that the baby was in distress, right? So I was like, okay. She goes, you need to get her to the hospital. Well, I was in the hospital, Jen, within 45 minutes I was there, right? And they handcuffed you in the taxi, and then they release you from the handcuffs when you're at the hospital. But you do turn up to the hospital in handcuffs. Now, it was like this in 2009, and it was like this in 2017. Whether these rules have changed, I don't know. I can only talk from mine and my friend's experience, my close friend's experience. They released me at the hospital, but by that time, you're already a spectacle, Jen, because all the expecting mothers from the out have seen you in handcuffs pregnant. So it's a little bit demeaning, but, you know, that's prison. You can't really complain about it. They put me in for my test, you know, where they put the monitors on your belly to check that the heart rate's all right. And his heart rate kept dropping. It was like he was coming in and out of consciousness. So they said, right, we need her induced. So they took me up to the birthing suite, where you have to have 2 prison officers with you at all time. But again, you still get all the same privileges, gas and air, epidural, whatever that other one is. Yeah, all the good stuff. Yeah, all the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
They ring your partner or your family member for you, so you can still have a birthing partner. So the only difference is you've got 2 prison officers on the other side of the curtain. So you've got to give birth with them there. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know whether I caught there or not. Did your partner was allowed there as well? Was it just the 2 police officers?
Yeah, no, you're allowed your spouse or a family member there as a birthing partner, so you still get all the same privileges, but you've just got your 2 prison officers in there as well, but they have to stay in the room.
What were they like? Like, were they decent? Go on.
Right, okay.
So the lady, like a real picture of this. So we got, you know, you're in there, you're getting induced. It's really going for it, and you've got these 2 coppers. Prison officers, not quite the same, but you know what I mean. At least good value.
The 2 that they sent in afterwards. Now the prison officer that took me to the hospital with another one, I can't remember what the other one was like, but she was lovely. She was proper lovely, and she said, I wish I could stay with you, but I can't. And I thought, well, you could if you asked for an extra shift, but okay, whatever. And then the 2 they sent after that, well, one of this little woman, right, she must have been about 35, 40. She should have never have been a prison officer. She was a little dumpy thing, right? She didn't have a flipping clue. No lived experience. The guy was exactly the same. He was like this great big, he looked like, I don't mean to be rude, but like a computer nerd. Do you know what I mean? So you can imagine what they were thinking. I'm there. I've been on the front page news as, you know, the local stabber, let's say, right? So they must, I don't know what they were thinking, to be fair. Right. So, they just didn't have a clue. And when my partner said, can you give us some dignity and step out? They were like, no, we can't do that. They were a little bit shirty, but I just think they felt awkward, to be fair, because, I mean, what do you do in that situation? So that's what they were like. And then, it was all just go. But to be honest, Jen, right, I was in that much pain. I just didn't care who was in the room.
No, I was going to get on. So you obviously, you had an induction, as you said. Did that take a while to kick in? Because with me, I had to be induced in the end because I was a week late. And they used that, I won't go into grand detail for people watching, but they used that pessary, and that then forced a labour on. Was that the same view?
It was, and they also put me on a drip, on a timed drip.
Oh, yes,
Yes, they put me on that timed drip, and then it literally just went, it went so quick, but in the end, they had to get a ventouse. Now, a ventouse is like a big plunger that you use down the toilet. So they're pulling the baby, but as they're pulling his head out, the cord has wrapped around his neck 4 times. So they're pulling him, and then the umbilical cord's pulling him back into the placenta. So they're going in and out with him, in and out, and he's blue. And then she's gone, stop. And then she's cut it one time, but she had to pull him out, keep pulling him out a bit more to make sure she could cut it without hurting him. 4 times they had to cut him. And then they got him out. He was breathing for a second. They put him on me, on my chest. And then he just went blue. And they grabbed him off me and had to put him in the little incubator and resuscitate him. But he was fine. He had jaundice and they took him down to intensive care where I was still able to breastfeed him and get milk to him from my breast. And yeah, that was the process of the birth. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I thought my birth was pretty intense, but
yeah,
that's, the poor little Mike.
Yeah.
That is so traumatic. Did they not think of cesarean during any of this? Or was it too late?
I think it was too late. I think it was too late because he was there. Do you know what I mean? And they didn't know the cord was round his neck. So what he'd done is he'd opened his bowels in the womb and he'd been swallowing the dirty water and whatnot. But anyway, he's absolutely fine now and he's 6 foot. So he's survived really well. So then I had to stay in the hospital, Jen, and I can't remember if it was 1 week or 2. And I had to have 2 prison officers with me at all times. So if I went for a shower, and you've got to think, you know, you're still damaged down there, so you've got to change all your bits and bobs with these prison officers in the room.
Oh no.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So there's a curtain, you can close the curtain, but you can imagine it's your dignity's completely gone, you know. And then that was it then. I managed to get, despite Officer Greasy, and we'll go into him in a moment, right? Despite Officer Greasy trying to get my mother and baby unit place stopped, they warranted me one because I went through all the checks with social services. There was nothing. I was not a risk to children. I was a good mum to my other child. You know, I wasn't on the banned list or anything like that. So they said, give her a place. And the next thing I know, I'm going back to the prison with my baby in tow. So yeah, he was safe, I was safe. And then I get to the mother and baby unit, and then who opens my door straight away? Officer Greasy. So should I touch on that?
Right, yeah, let's get in. For anyone who hasn't obviously heard your story before, let's get real deep with Officer Greasy, which obviously, by the sounds of his name, is an absolute greaseball. That's a polite way of putting it. There.
Yeah, polite way of putting it, right. So what happened is when I was still on the normal wings, which was the general population wings on C wing, right, he came over for a visit. And because I didn't know what was happening with my mother and baby unit place, I was eager to ask him, was he there to see me? So I said, oh, have you come about my mother and baby unit place? And he just looked at me and went, no, like really, really nastily. So that ticked me off. I was heavily pregnant and upset. I've gone and saw his SO, his SO was on the wing somewhere. And I said, oh, you can tell that Greasy, well, see you next Tuesday, that he doesn't have to speak to me like that. I'm still a human being, right? Worst thing I could have said, Jen, because this other SO, who was probably jealous of a younger guy working on the unit, you know how they get, couldn't wait to tell this other guy, oh, she's called you Greasy. She thinks you look greasy. So that stuck in his head, and he tried his best to get my mother and baby unit place revoked, Jen, just because I'd said something in the heat of pregnancy. Yeah.
Which
so when I get,
exactly. So yeah,
what we're all capable of. Anyway, so I've got to the mother and baby unit. I'm breastfeeding my baby, so you know I'm naked from the top half, right? Because it was easier because I didn't have any proper tops and bras like that. He's bursting. He goes, Greasy, am I? And I was like, oh my flipping gosh, I've just given birth. Like, are we really going to have this conversation? So straight away, I went into fight or flight mode. So I was like, oh, I didn't mean you were greasy looking. I meant you were greasy. It's a street word for being cool. I just made it up. I never even heard that word in my flipping life, right? But you know, as women, we go into survival mode, don't we?
Yeah, greasy, it's cool.
Oh, does it mean cool? Oh, right. Okay, well, great. I don't know. And anyway, right?
I don't know. No. Right, maybe we're starting a trend here. You never know.
Maybe we're starting a trend. Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. So we don't know if it means. We don't know what it means anyway. Right. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then he goes. Oh, you think I'm cool, right? And I was like, oh no. Anyway, the next thing I know, 2 weeks down the line, you know, he keeps coming to the cell and chit chatting, and then the all the other officers were off duty. He then moved me cells. I was in this lovely big cell opposite the phone and the office, right? He goes, oh, I'm going to move your cells. So he moved me up the wing, and I thought, well, why is that? And he said, oh, somebody's coming in with twins. This is what he said to me. Nobody came in with twins, Jen. Nobody came in with twins. Anyway, so he put me in this cell out of the eye's view of the officers, right? And then he was just hounding me, coming, saying things like, oh, you're the best mum on the unit. A girl like you shouldn't be in prison. I can't believe what you went through. I've got your file on the desk. I know everything about you, blah, 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 blah. Then he would write, he would say about my letters. Now, it goes in the little communal post box, right? And because there's not that many women on the wing, he obviously was reading it at night time for something to do. So he was like, he came to my cell one day and he was like, oh, I read your mail to your man last night. And he was like, why haven't you written anything about me and all this? And I was like, what on earth? So then I had to time when I wrote to my boyfriend to make sure he wasn't on duty so that he didn't get wound up. So I would write to my boyfriend on certain days. And then when it was him on duty, I would have to write to my friend who had been shipped out and say, oh, there's a really lovely officer on the wing and he's so cool. And just like that, you know, so like honestly, it was just mental torture, Jen, right?
Yeah.
And then one day, but I do want to separate this terrible experience from my birthing and raising a baby in prison experience, because it's two totally different experiences. Yeah. And I don't want to mar my experience by that. I was just very unlucky, and I don't know any other women that happened to. It's just he took a shine to me, an unnecessary shine. Anyway, I was sitting in my cell. The next thing I know, he storms in, grabs hold of me and just starts kissing me. And all I can remember was his belt pressing on me, his shirt, you know, the uniform and that. Honestly, this is why I can't stand the uniform. There's a well-known TikToker, and every time I see the uniform, I'm just like, oh, it just gives me PTSD, Jen. Proper bad, right? And then it was then because on the mother and baby unit, you can send your baby out for visits home. So my partner would collect our son, and take him out on visits. Well, that was his prime time then to have his way with me. So then he would, well, you know, it was full intimacy, that he coerced me into, And I thought, what do I do? You know, do I bring it up to the SO? And I sat and I racked my brain about it. And I was like, there's just no way, Jen, I could have done it, because, you know, they're a clique. Do you know what I mean? If I'd have gone and told the SO that, he would have spun it around onto me, because that's how he was. I would have got another charge. I would have had my baby taken away from me. So I couldn't risk it, Jen. So I had to go along with it until he got moved to a different part of the prison. And then what was it? One day, this is how abusive he was, right? It was me and my friend from Luton up in the next cell, right? We're all there on the landing as mothers with our babies, He's come bursting on the wing. He said, there's been a bomb scare. Everybody get in your rooms. He's physically grabbed me and my friend from Luton, dragged us into our cell and said, we've got to stay in here until the bomb scare has been, squashed or whatever. And he was making all this big thing. And then when I went to my work placement the next day and I said, oh, what about the scare that we had yesterday? And they were like, what are you on about? So he fabricated it. He fabricated it, Jen. Proper, honestly. So that, I can't even. And then that.
During the bomb scare, he took you and your mate into the room this time.
Yeah, took me and my mate into the room this time. Yeah, but he didn't do anything to her, intimacy or anything like that. But he was just scaring us. Keeping us.
All a psychological game.
All psychological, yeah, absolutely. Oh. And she was like, this is weird. And then the girls on the unit knew that he was like on me. And one of my friends was like, he's on you. And I couldn't say to her because there was already jealousy brewing. Do you know what I mean? But it wasn't wanted attention. And then I told my mate over the phone in code, who had just been released from C Wing. And she was like, Gemma, this isn't right. She's like, it isn't right. She goes, what can I do? And I was like, there's nothing we can do. And she goes, I knew it when he kept coming to your work placement, there was something going on. And I said, yeah. So all this went on. But apart from that, I also did manage to raise my baby really well. So apart from this prison officer who was eventually moved to a part of the prison, now you would have thought he would have, if he wanted to get away from me, like he said in court, he would have moved to like the male side or somewhere else. He moved Jen to my work placement because he was worried about what other officers I was talking to at the work placement. So although the intimacy stopped just before I left, his control tactics is he was with me all day at my work placement, looking who I was interacting with, looking who I was talking to. Yeah, worried who I was saying anything to. Then he would come and target my friends to see if I'd said any information about him, interrogating my friends in the prison.